The company presented a handgun and began to fire an unknown amount of rounds at fellow employees.
And Police Chief Jamie Smith says when they found Horton's body in an SUV sometime later in the nearby town of Guntersville, he was dead too, having shot himself. They also found numerous firearms in the car.
Fox's Evan Brown. Tensions on the rise in the Middle East. Israel's defense forces conducting airstrikes on militant sites in Gaza for the first time since a ceasefire last month. Israel says the strikes were prompted by incendiary balloons launched from Gaza that started at least 10 fires in southern Israel. America is listening to Fox News.
You dread waiting in those long, inconvenient lines? That's why you won't find them at Bank Pacific. We're back to our pre-COVID Monday to Saturday hours with all of our branches open. You know, that where others put branches, we place roots thing. And if you don't want to come to the bank, we have MyCloud Banking through which you can go to the bank on any of your devices, including through our new cool mobile banking platform with remote capture so you can deposit checks from anywhere. Offline, online, no line. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Busy week? Mescla Bistro in Tumon has you covered. Let us take the worries out of your dinner meal planning. Check out our daily specials or enjoy some of your local favorites. Plus, receive a free kids meal with each adult dinner entree purchase Monday through Thursday. Call 969-2652 for more information or to make a reservation at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. And don't forget, Jack Larimer is live every Saturday night. Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
A fire continues to smolder in a chemical plant in northern Illinois.
Fire officials say they've made progress in putting out the fire at the Chemtool plant in Rockton, Illinois. The massive fire destroyed the 230,000 square foot plant, which manufactures grease and lubricant. Winnebago County Health Administrator Dr. Sandra Martell said the evacuation order of dozens of homes within 1 mile of the plant would continue.
We really want to get and see, do those numbers hold well through the next 20 overnight? Right, so that we can make sure that those positive numbers that we're getting in terms of air quality can persist.
The cause of the massive fire was unclear. Roughly 70 employees were at the plant at the time, but no one was injured. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
China plans to launch a manned spacecraft into orbit on Wednesday. 2 American astronauts will go for a spacewalk outside the International Space Station to work on the installation of new solar arrays. A police officer in Honolulu has been charged with murder. 2 other cops with attempted murder for the shooting death of a 16-year-old boy driving a stolen car in April. The prosecutor says Officer Jeffrey Tom fired 10 shots into that car without provocation. A disgraced movie mogul is headed back toward Hollywood.
Harvey Weinstein is headed to Los Angeles to face rape and sexual assault charges. He's expected to be removed from a New York correctional facility and transferred sometime in July. His lawyer, Norman Effman, in a New York courtroom said that he would appeal the decision. A requested stay was denied. Effman has been arguing against the move over paperwork issues and his client's health. The 69-year-old faces 11 sexual assault charges in Los Angeles involving 5 women. If convicted, he could face up to an additional 140 years behind bars. His extradition has been delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Relax and unwind with daily happy hours at the Westin Resort Guam. Enjoy 30% off our newly curated menu. Bud Bucket special starting at $20 or Leaping Horse wine specials for only $5. Available from 5 to 7 p.m. at Mix at Cha-Cha-Cha or savor the flavors of Taste Restaurant featuring international cuisine and your favorite seafood station on ice. Enjoy bottomless Bud Family beer and Leaping Horse wine specials while you groove to the smooth sounds of Jesse and Ruby. Call 647-1020 for reservations. Budweiser reminds you to please drink responsibly.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Chili's is bringing you a full meal offer with 3 for Me for just $15. You get a beverage, a starter, and an entree. First, choose from a refreshing Coca-Cola or iced tea, pick a starter, then select your choice of a mouth-watering entree, like Cajun pasta with grilled chicken, ranchero chicken tacos, or the savory Santa Fe burger. Dine in today or visit Chili'sGuam.com for delivery and to-go options. Chili's, 3 for Me for just $15. Available for a limited time. Chili's, savor the moment.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That was true today, the day before yesterday, and even yesterday, when we had one of those days where there was no tall tales. And it's unfortunate that things like that happen. I don't know who it affects the most, me or the tailgaters out there in our international radio listening audience. But sometimes a person's got to do what he's got to do, even if it means missing tall tales. So anyhow, here we are today. We've got today, tomorrow, and Friday, 3 whole days of tall tales ahead of us. And maybe I'll talk twice as fast, and that way we can make up for the time I wasn't here yesterday.
Double the speed.
Double the speed.
Double the tall tales.
Yeah. Increase the height of the tall tales. Instead of 6 feet, we'll take it up to 12 feet, right? So I've got two editorials here from the Daily News. I'm not really crazy about either one of them. So let's do them both. Yesterday, our view, Guam should have a voice if island is used for Afghan evacuation. As the United States begins to take steps to withdraw U.S. troops from Afghanistan, a big question looms about the many Afghans who have helped the United States and allied forces in our country's efforts to provide stability in that region of the world. According to global news reports, there are tens of thousands of Afghans who fear for their lives once the U.S. pulls out. These people and their family members have provided translation, construction, and other services to the United States federal government. What, to the United States federal government? Why is that necessary? How about just to the United States?
Well, somewhere there's a non-federal government.
Yeah, and then a lot of times, if we're engaged in any kind of foreign combat, we send the states, not, yeah. As a general principle, the fewer you can use to make your words, the better. So construction and other services to the United States would have been more than enough. They and their families already been targeted by the Taliban, some having lost family members as warnings for their work with the American military. Advocates, veterans, and federal officials have demanded that President Biden's administration work quickly to evacuate the Afghan partners to American territory where they can be vetted and processed for transition to the United States. Guam has been identified as a possible evacuation site. By whom? You know, there was one nonprofit that said Guam would make a good place. No official in the United States government has said that. And there's been some grumblings over there on the separatist side. They need to ask us for permission first, by God. Guam Governor Leon Guerrero recently sent a letter to President Biden requesting that our government has a seat at the table. That's not what she said. They just can't get this right. What she said was, we'll take them. And she said, we'd like to be involved, but we'll take them. Governor Leon Guerrero recently sent a letter to President Biden requesting that our local government has a seat at the table if Guam is chosen as a processing or evacuation site. In her letter, Leanne Guerrero noted that Guam has served in a similar capacity, et cetera, et cetera. Leanne Guerrero also noted that she wants to assure that whatever decisions are made, they're in the best interests of the island. You know, she could have left some of this stuff out of her letter. You really don't need to say that. Dear President Biden, we are more than happy to take all of the Afghan refugees that you send here. If they trash our island and leave things in a horrible state when they're finished, it's okay with me. No.
As long as they leave the rugs behind.
Yeah. You really don't need to say, but I've got to look out for my island, and a way of saying it was we will, as has been our practice in the past, accommodate the U.S. government in the housing of these people temporarily, and I look forward to entering into discussions with you on this. Not, well, if you don't talk to me about it, we ain't going to do it. And that's the point that the Daily News is trying to get across. It's like they're letting Anamita Carr and Proteji Latexan write their editorials. All right, here's today. Community rebuilds after flag burning. On Monday, the island was greeted with a disturbing image on the front lawn of the Guam Congress building. A display of pride flags was burned. I think one flag was burned, not a display, one flag. An apparent expression of hate against a symbol of love and acceptance. Editorialize much?
Come on.
Yeah. As of Tuesday, no suspects were identified, so the motives behind the flag burning remain unknown. I will be the first person to come forward and say this. Does the term false flag mean anything to you?
Oh.
Yep. If that's the case, it's really worked, hasn't it? Yeah. Come over there at 3 o'clock in the morning. Get Herman and his husband Henry to go over there at 3 in the morning with some lighter fluid, light that flag on fire, disappear, just in case they're not running a risk that they miss it. Call the Daily News and leave an anonymous message. Somebody burned the flag on the lawn of the ledge, and look how well it has worked.
You know what? That's not to cry. I'm already prefacing because I'm afraid of what's going to happen afterwards. But I'm just going to say it. We've seen a lot of these cry wolf situations,
exactly,
where it turns out to be the perpetrator is actually the victim.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying this instance.
No.
But they were able to decorate even more.
Yeah. and then they get a line like this in the editorial page. A display of pride flags was burned, an apparent expression of hate against a symbol of love and acceptance. Well, I'm still going to turn in that paint store. I was going to paint my car in pride flag colors, and I went to this paint store, but they couldn't sell me striped paint. So how am I going to do? How am I going to? That's discrimination.
It's the brush.
Yeah, I should break out that case where the guy back in Colorado got punished because he wouldn't bake a cake. Remember that one?
Oh yeah.
Famous cake. Usually you have the little statuary of bride and groom on the top. I guess they wanted 2 grooms on the top. And these guys were from Massachusetts, where they couldn't legally marry at the time. They came to Colorado, ordered that cake, made a big fuss out of it.
I think they targeted the guy too.
Of course. Absolutely they did. They probably had to go to 50 bakeries before they found someone who would turn them down for the right reason. And that's why I'm a suspicious person anyhow. But when I saw that picture in the paper, I thought immediately, false flag. Of course, the way I play with words in double entendre, you might think that I always characterize the rainbow flag as a false flag. Oh, well. In a nation with a history of intolerance and violence against the LGBTQ community, Pride Month displays are becoming increasingly common. Through the years, more people have publicly acknowledged that they are gay, lesbian, or transgender. More people have realized that they have loved ones who are members of the LGBT community. Well, you know what? I had to recognize that my sister's a Democrat. Talk about heavy burdens, right? Laws have changed and people have embraced differences. This has created a safer, healthier environment for everyone. In some areas, pride flags and banners are displayed by municipal and state governments. I'm so happy for them. And that not long ago branded gays and lesbians as criminals. But as Pride Month becomes more widely celebrated, some people have chosen to destroy LGBTQ symbols on public and private property. Well, I'm against this destruction of private property. I don't care what it is. I don't think it's the right thing to do. The Sacramento Bee reported that a large rainbow flag on that city's Trinity Episcopal Cathedral, that figures, yeah, was ripped down and burned on June 4. In response, Northern California Bishop Megan Episcopals Traquair asked her diocese to pray for the person who did it, according to Episcopal News Service. While the monetary value of the flag is minimal, the symbolism of the act is immense, she wrote in an email to the diocese. The pride flag is a symbol of love, of struggle, of sacrifice by generations of our brothers and sisters of both sexes. I realize that all are not accepting of our LGBT neighbors, but we should all be united in condemning this act. Christ calls us all to show love and respect to our neighbors. Other communities have also reported similar incidents since the beginning of Pride Month. On June 3 in Kaysville, Utah, someone removed a pride flag from a private home and burned it, according to the Standard Examiner of Ogden, Utah. The incident is being investigated as a hate crime. Where's Jim Moylan when we really, really need him? On June 9 at Central Washington University, someone removed a pride flag from the student union and shared a video of the flag burning on social media, according to the Seattle Post-Intelligencer. A student was later arrested. Flags are merely symbols, but they are powerful symbols. Likewise, as the bishop from California wrote, the symbolism of burning a flag is immense. Yeah. The community's response needs to be just as powerful. We need to show that our community stands for respect and acceptance. I don't know. Respect, you got to earn my respect. I will tolerate this LGBTQ thing. I can't say that I embrace it, and I certainly don't celebrate it. We need to show that our community stands for resilience in the face of intimidation. Now, when the Daily News says we need to show that our community stands for resilience in the face of intimidation, who is our community here? Is this the newsletter for the LGBTQ community? We need to show that our community stands for resilience in the face of intimidation. We respond by rallying and rebuilding. Well, I'm not going to burn up much blue ink today, that's for sure. Not on those two. Then we go to the Post. Road maintenance takes a back seat as DPW copes with woefully inadequate manpower. Everywhere you go, there are signs that local government has neglected to put even the most basic upkeep of our public roads on its to-do list. Just a few minutes of driving on Guam will make you realize how far our government has fallen behind on maintaining roads and highways. We're not talking about full-on road improvement projects, the kind that involve striping the old asphalt and repaving a long stretch of road. We're not talking multi-million-dollar road repairs. We're talking about relatively safe, simple safety measures. The paint-on lane marker should not be left to fade beyond obscurity, causing a safety hazard. Major roads and highways should not have potholes that remain unrepaired for months on end, if not longer. Now, I've talked a little bit about potholes before. I can't resist. Every hole in the road is not a pothole. Your classic pothole occurs in roads in the northern part of the United States where you have asphalt highways, water seeps under the highway, freezes. When water freezes, it expands, causes the asphalt to pop up, and over time disintegrate, and you have a hole in the asphalt. We don't have very many freezes here, but we can have a pothole where water seeps under the highway and erodes the asphalt and creates that hole. So, you know, if you're driving down the road that was just torn up because someone wanted to install water, sewer, or power, and the road is bumpy, that is not a pothole. It's even worse than a pothole, because it just shows that Public Works is not holding anybody to standard. Markers and curbs should not be left with faded reflective safety markers, making it difficult for motorists to navigate at night, especially those people who on 0 dark 30 Saturday mornings want to get out in those races with the power poles. The prompt maintenance of roads is a basic expectation in a place where good government, and which receives nearly $1 billion a year in aid from the federal government. Vince Ariola, who's been he's not the Department of Public Works Director, he's the Director of Public Works for about 2 years, said part of the problem is the lack of manpower. DPW has been downsized for the last 15 years. At one point, we had 1,100 people. We're down to 260, and 100 of those are bus drivers. So you do the math, and you see that the work that's out there we have is woefully inadequate. A staff of 160 for DPW, if we don't count the school bus drivers, does seem inadequate. But it's interesting that while DPW's total number of people on the payroll has shrunk dramatically for over a decade, the government of Guam's total personnel has not shrunk by anywhere near that magnitude. Gov Guam had 11,750 people on payroll as of March this year. 19 years ago, in 2002, the furthest data we could find as of press time, Gov Guam had 12,600 on the payroll. In nearly a 2-decade span, the total number of people employed by Gov Guam has decreased by only 6.7%. But then here is DPW getting a 76% decrease in total personnel, even though the department has a tall list of crucial life-saving tasks to do. These tasks also include keeping our students safely transported via school buses. And on top of that, DPW holds a key function in making sure economic development projects continue to churn by issuing building permits and signing off on business license applications in a timely manner instead of having applicants wait for months sometimes. We've been able to get some funding through some of this COVID relief funding to bring on board some folks to assist our maintenance projects. So that's been a help. But we're basically playing catching up and being reactionary instead of planning ahead. DPW is trying to catch up by outsourcing some projects, including one recently awarded to a private contractor, Highway Safety Services, for a maximum amount of $2 million to perform island-wide lane striping and marking using federal funds. Now, I'm going to stop here for a second. Maybe that's the way to go. You know, we need to do a cost-benefit analysis. Government of Guam employees, if you add in the total cost, including their post-employment costs, government of Guam employees aren't cheap, and sometimes don't have the ability and the equipment to do the right kind of work. So maybe 160 would be enough if we have 160 people who are experts in drawing up bid proposals, entering into contracts, following up and inspecting the performance on the contracts, so that we, like the Power Authority, has outsourced an awful lot of what they do, and it's worked very well for them. Ariola said DPW also receives assistance from the mayors. By and large, short-staffed and has a pile of overwhelming work. Yeah, I can imagine what the assistance from the mayors looks like. Everyone keeps saying downsize the government. You can only downsize the government so much because the work still remains. We haven't closed any roads, any bridges, so the maintenance and upkeep still remain, yet the labor force has been reduced. So that kind of math just doesn't work, Ariola said. It's interesting how DPW has shrunk so much manpower size while the rest of government has only decreased personnel ever so slightly. It might just be a question of GovGuam priorities. Maybe those in charge of setting priorities can afford to get new cars every few years, so bad roads are not an issue for them. One good thing that might change soon to help out is the plan to utilize prison labor to do some of the backbreaking work. And I got to jump in here again. Now, everybody knows that that's the way to do it, right? Get those prisoners out there to do it. Well, we have a program called the Prison Public Works Program. And it says that prisoners who are incarcerated for a certain list of crimes can be used for public works programs. And for every 40 hours of work that they do in these public works programs, they receive a credit of 1 day good time. So prisoners are more than willing to do that. Besides that, prisoners want to work. They don't want to lay around in their cells. They really want to work. But because of the way the list is set up, it's really hard to find someone who did something serious enough to find himself in prison, but not so serious that he's eligible for the Prison Public Works Program. And I know exactly what would happen if you eased up those standards. I was driving down the road yesterday, and I saw this man beside the road with a rake in his hand, and I know that he's in prison for murder. What's he doing out on the road? You know, you're going to have, and to me, people that molest children would be fine. You know, there aren't very many children sitting out on the road. But as soon as those people were used in this prison public work, there'd be an outcry. You know, they put this child molester out there. So, and another myth I want to dispel. We all know what a chain gang is, right? I remember driving through southern states, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, when I was a youngster, and really seeing people out there with striped clothes, chains around their ankles, right? If you saw the movie Cool Hand Luke, you'd know all about chain gangs, right?
Oh, brother, where art thou?
And we think, how inhumane to chain those people up like that. But I'm going to take, as usual, a contrarian view. Chain gangs are actually humanitarian, because you could take one corrections officer and a chain gang of perhaps 10 or 15 people out and do the roads, and you can do it. 15 people, you're probably going to have 2 corrections officers, and you're probably going to have shotguns. So when the inmates are chained together, you lessen the necessary number of supervisors for the inmates, meaning more inmates can get out and work along the roads, meaning the better they like it because they want to work, and the better we like it because it saves money. But I don't see any of these things happening because we're very stuck in doing what we've always done. And there's always a good reason for that. You know, you take the government official who's faced with a problem, and solution A is something that's been tried 45 times before and never worked. Solution B is something that was just suggested to him today. It's different from what we've ever done before. It can't be any worse than solution A. So which solution does he go with? Solution A. If it doesn't work, he's got a perfect defense. You know, I just followed our practice. I did what we've always done. And for some reason, it didn't work. If he tries solution B and it doesn't work, well, what were you doing? What were you thinking of doing that? We've never done that before. So there is a built-in incentive for the status quo. Okay, so much for I'm almost finished with Demi Cutney. Let's take a short break, and after the break, I'm going to come back and chat a little bit with nobody but another Joe.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so here we go, back on Tall Tales. I'm wrapping up Semi Ikadni, no blue stars today, not very insightful editorials today. Daily news, fly your flag on your own time. That's my advice. Okay, let's see what another Joe has to say. How can you enlighten us today, another Joe?
How can I do it?
Enlighten us.
So we are at I want to say a crossroads of generations here where the younger generation is looking to leadership, and you got this pride organizers that are looking for attention, and so there's this incident, and so therefore, people with a lot of time on their hands want to address this issue. It's an important issue, but we all know that family is important. In the context of course, we all live on a small island, and if we ourselves are not part of this pride community organization, we definitely have relatives who we believe we know can identify with this organization of what had been thought of as alternative lifestyles. And these relatives we've known since our younger years, could go back decades, and before it became an issue of a different lifestyle, we've known each other. We love our relatives. Without a doubt, we would not want any harm to come to our relatives. The thing that amazes me is it just sounds as though these organizers are pontificating as to what we should and shouldn't do, what the morals are, with the the very strong opinions, and this goes back again to this feeling of, are you woke enough? And so I think it's a very useful, since we all have a lot of time on our hands, we do some mental exercise, and some fact checking and see exactly what's going on, and not just have a philosophical, I don't know what you call it, opining. I think people are caught off guard. They don't know what to feel about this. There definitely needs to be an investigation. The thing is that I was listening to the leader of this organization or community, and they were critical of the church. And we kind of have a feeling when they say the church, I think they're talking in particular about the Catholic Church being the majority Christian church here in Guam, when they say the church. And I'm sorry, but my elders had real reverence for the leaders of our church, our faith, and some of them did things that they shouldn't have, and they were held to account. But the ones who are left over are not the bad ones. And so I was listen to the interview, and they were in the same breath. They're on the other radio program, who I won't say names. They're talking about hate crimes and things, and comparing it to say, oh, that doesn't usually happen stateside, and oh, this can't happen here, and I'm looking at like exactly what has happened. You got cameras all around. There's still an investigation. They don't want to say much, except they're saying a lot. And people are apprehensive and they're worried about acts of violence, but you can't be critical and not have get attention drawn to who you are criticizing. And I'm sorry, but they're criticizing our church and the leaders, and they even brought up by name. They brought up, hey, our lieutenant governor, it's an overt something, discrimination or whatever. They won't even let him be a godparent to his godchild. Huh? Why are you comparing what is considered a violent act of burning of a flag to, and in the same breath, you're talking about hate crimes, but it's not so bad stateside. But, oh, my God, how dare the church not allow the lieutenant governor to be a godparent to his godchild? I think that their position has been consistent for decades.
2,000 years, Jose. 2,000
So
years.
I don't think there's a lot of new thought here. Yeah, I don't think they're making stuff up. And to imply the Catholic Church hates the pride community, I think it's, they're to imply. I think to imply if you're saying in the same breath. I think that's it's kind of a stretch. It's kind of, especially here in Guam, and I want to be bringing this up, except that I'm one of those unfortunate. I don't know what you call it. In school, maybe you call them nerds or people who actually listen to my elders, and so I picked up that my elders really had strong support for our church leaders and the faith. So when you come out and start, and these elders are either no longer with us, or they're old and gray and not as vocal. So you're criticizing people who I love, and in the same breath, you're saying that what they supported was hate, or they're implying it. And I think that's kind of much for it to go unnoticed. You're being critical of it. So I think, and I think a lot of people might be kind of concerned and possibly disappointed that our new Archbishop maybe hasn't addressed it. Maybe it's only been maybe a day, so give him some time. But I don't think the Catholic Church of Guam hates the Pride community. So please don't imply it. Maybe you didn't intend to imply it.
I got to jump in here. I got to jump in here for a second, Jose. I don't go with this community business. That's identity politics and critical race theory. Whatever an individual wants to do with his private life should be exactly that. If I don't know about it, fine. I don't know why I have to know about it, but that's where we are now. where people make it clear that I have to know what their private sexual life is about, whether I want to or not. And and then the next thing is to establish this pride community, which apparently has various rights that go beyond individual rights. You know, I don't like to see destruction of property, no matter what kind of flag it is. I don't like to see that burned down, but burning a pride flag to me is no different than burning a flag for, say, the National Football League. And I don't see rising up in righteous indignation because people in the community were hurt by it. That's my take on it. But I think you're right on point. You know, if people want to do certain things in their private life and it has no effect on others, the libertarian in me says, yeah, that's great. But when you want to take things from your private life, change long-standing customs and traditions like marriage, for example, and the practice of Catholicism, then you're not going to get a very favorable review from me. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Another Joe. Thanks for calling.
Okay, thanks for your time. Well,
yeah, Another Joe chimes in.
If I can just interject something, that
you may.
And this is something I think it is difficult to talk about, not because the subject matter is difficult, but there's this notion that if you want to have a discussion about pride or anything that's going on that pertains to this, that you have to speak a certain way or say a certain thing, or else you're already canceled. And we've seen the cancel culture do major damage on parts of people who have different opinion, whether they're right or wrong, or whether you agree or disagree. And my big question is, why does anybody have to comment on this? In the sense that they're shamed into commenting on something. We've already seen companies putting rainbow flags and the rainbow colors on their logos, which, interesting enough, only happens in the Western logos. But when they go to their Middle Eastern logos, they're still the same ones. They're not going to place it on there, and it almost seems disingenuous.
Well, Ray calls it rainbow washing.
Yeah.
That somebody in the back office has said, you know, this is good for profit, so let's get that rainbow flag on our logo.
Well, we even run the risk of getting canceled for the fact that we're talking about it in this manner. And I just want to be open about that. You know, if you want to have this pride thing, you're going to have to take some of the hits as well, just as everybody else does with everything else that they promote, whether it's their sexuality or their patriotism or their religion.
Or their political party.
Or their political party.
Or their conservatism.
Not everybody's going to like it.
Yeah. Yeah, good point, Jose. Okay, let's go to the card. Here's what I got on the card. I've got GPA versus gamblers, and I've got some kind words for GPA. I've got Amata and Biden versus Tina, and we had some late-breaking news today. We have a decision out of the 10th Circuit in Denver ruling against overturning the district court's decision that people in American Samoa have birthright citizenship. Today's a day for litigation. Next on the card is Pinehoff versus Liu, so I'll talk about the dismissal of Mr. Pinehoff's lawsuit. And then we've got DM versus the Vatican. There is a suit pending in the District Court of Guam against the Holy See, against the Vatican. So this is a day for Law and Order notebooks. Then I've got NPR versus Tom Hanks.
It's a very interesting story.
Yeah. Now, Tom Hanks is a classic everyman. You know, he's like your brother-in-law or the guy down the street or the fellow that your uncle served with in the Army or something. He's as common as salt, as plain, as American as they come. You wouldn't think that anyone would ever develop a dislike for Tom Hanks. That was, if you didn't know anything about critical race theory.
Then cometh the cancel culture.
Exactly, yeah. And then maybe I'll get to right-wing conspiracy theory versus left-wing truth today. We'll see how it goes. starting out with GPA versus gamblers. And here's a story. The Power Authority has determined that 7 employees engaged in online gambling using an app they downloaded on their personal cell phones. The employees used the app for different lengths of time last year, but generally began after the pandemic started. A memorandum of interviews within GPD's internal audit office shows that some employees either were introduced to the gambling app by law enforcement or knew the police officers. Wasn't that the Post editorial today? Did I read the wrong editorial? I think
you read
did.
Yesterday's, but yeah, this is today's.
Yeah. Okay, I'll read that. I'll get that to that editorial tomorrow. It's a good editorial. The fire department spokesman, Sherika Chargaloff, said GFD had not received any inquiries referring to GFD employees being involved in the gambling act. A response from the judiciary is pending. GPA Internal Audit Office interviewed 11 employees, and there's a summary here as to what the responses were, etc. And I think I had this on the show, day before yesterday. I had the same item on the show. And I said, okay, so there was a report done by their internal auditor. I'm going to fire off a sunshine law request on that and see which tap dancer at the Power Authority will respond. Well, surprise, surprise, they sent me that. They sent me the GPA auditor's report. Even though I didn't ask for it, they sent the memo that John Beneventi circulated to employees. Wow! So that's the way to do it. You know, government officials, if you don't want to have tall tales on your back, when you get a FOIA, and they didn't wait the whole 4 or 5 days. They sent it yesterday. So if you don't want to have tall tales on your back all the time, when you get a FOIA, take it seriously, respond to it, and do it. Even do it early if you can. And I'll say, good job.
And it's the law.
Besides that, it's the law. Now, there was something that I did notice, and maybe they're smartening up over at the Power Authority. If anybody should be experts on the open government law and the sunshine law, it should be GPA, the Waterworks, and CCU after all of the trouble that they've had, right? They ought to really understand how it works. And the auditor's report doesn't identify people by name. It says employee number 1, employee number 2, et cetera, et cetera. So they couldn't hide behind the old, we can't tell you, it's a personnel matter. Now, perhaps this will become a trend. So if you got an invitation to somebody's birthday party, and you worked at a government agency, it would read something like employee number 1 and their spouse would like to invite you, child number 1, wife number 2, etc. So maybe we'll never see the name of a government employee in print anymore. Maybe we'll always go this employee number 1, etc. Which is a better way than using the employee's name and then playing hide the ball.
Sure it's not employee 1?
Yeah, 1, W-O-N. Yeah, so good job, GPA. You know, so many agencies see FOIAs as challenges that they are free to disregard at will and not to pay much attention to them. Okay, next I have something that I was going to do yesterday, which was Amata and Biden versus Tina. President Biden, in an indirect win for American Samoa self-determination, has weighed in behind the use of the Insular cases in a social security dispute in Puerto Rico. KHGA News, Washington, D.C., correspondent Matt Kay explains. Biden backed his Justice Department in its June 7 filing with the Supreme Court against a lawsuit by a Puerto Rico man who claimed SSI benefits arguing Congress should fix the problem instead. Let's take a short break here, and I'll come back to Puerto Rico.
Indulge Dad this Father's Day with a well-prepared pairing from Pro Restaurant and Budweiser, the king of beers. Pro's specialized menu includes a slow-roasted, herb-crusted prime rib and an Amberbach barbecue-glazed pork chop. Pair Dad's meal with the Bud family for $3.50, Kona beers for $4, or Ironstone wines for $5. For dads with a sweet tooth, Pro Patisserie has created a milk tea mousse stout beer cake glazed with chocolate. To reserve a table, call Pro Restaurant at 646-PROA. Budweiser reminds you to drink responsibly.
Get your shot and win big prizes, Guam. The Office of the Governor and the Guam Visitors Bureau presents Vaccine Win Guam. Protect our community by getting your shot and enter online at visitguam.com/vax for a chance to win. Starting June 14th to July 21st, we'll be giving away weekly prizes of $10,000 cash and a brand new car to lucky residents who are fully vaccinated. That's 6 weeks of Vaccine Win opportunities. Some conditions apply. Log on to visitguam.com/vax for official promo rules or to submit your entry today. Let's Vaccine Win, Guam!
Okay, so here we go. Back to Puerto Rico. President Biden has weighed in behind use of the insular cases in a Social Security dispute in Puerto Rico. KHJ News, Washington, D.C. correspondent Matt Kay explains. Matt Kay used to hear Matt Kay on K57 all the time.
The correspondent from Washington, D.C.
Our Washington correspondent, Matt Kay from Washington. Biden backed his Justice Department in its June 7 filing with the Supreme Court against a lawsuit by a Puerto Rican man who claimed SSI benefits, arguing Congress should fix the problem instead. Now, if you've listened to Tall Tales, you've heard that more than once. Justice's filing and Biden's backing it based on the High Court's early 20th century insular cases is an apparent win for American Samoan self-determination and for Congresswoman Amata Raduagan. Amata was the lone holdout among island representatives at a midway House Resources hearing who backed a resolution opposing the insular cases as racist. Well, someone who spoke in favor of the CNMI, although not a representative of the CNMI, took a similar line, pointing out that the CNMI land tenure rules would not hold up if Downs were overruled. For Amata, the greater cause was self-government. The congressman is sending a letter to President Biden thanking him for, in effect, backing the insular cases and vindicating her position that possibly deals a death blow to the committee resolution spearheaded by Guam's equally American chief, Neil Weir. We're getting kind of weary of Neil Weir. Chairman Grijalva and other members, except for Amata, wrote to the Attorney General and Solicitor General in March to tell the Supreme Court they no longer back laws denying the island access to benefits. The administration's position now signals, should the Fitisi Manu case reach the Supreme Court, the Justice Department will again use the insular cases in opposing automatic birthright citizens in the American Samoa. Now, this is something that I got from a paper called Talanei from American Samoa. And I have Amata's letter of June 4th to President Biden. Thank you so much for reiterating your support for extending SSI benefits and other programs to Puerto Rico and other territories not eligible for those benefits. The principle you confirm that there can be no second-class citizens in the United States is a commitment that is welcomed by my constituents who are U.S. nationals, which special interest groups falsely have tried to label as a second-class status. You know, who's doing the labeling? Neil Weir. As you know, we are all Americans but fall into two statutory classifications, citizens and nationals. Both have the same permanent allegiance and loyalty to our nation and the U.S. Constitution. In Congress, I have the honor of representing both U.S. nationals and U.S. citizens in American Samoa, based on the principle that neither status is superior to the other. Your recognition that the appropriate way to guarantee equity in federal programs is through a legislative action, not lawsuits seeking court fiats on political questions, is welcome. Accordingly, I appreciate your pledge that the Biden administration will work with members of Congress to make these legislative fixes a reality. To that end, I have co-sponsored H.R. 537, authored by the Puerto Rican resident Commissioner Jennifer Gonzalez Colon, to make SSI a reality for our constituents in both jurisdictions. The people of American Samoa appreciated your visits to our island during your vice presidency and hope to welcome you again, etc. Amata Coleman Radewagen, Member of Congress. Very interesting. So, what it really comes down to is President Biden sided with Tall Tales and Amata Radewagen and against Tina and those anti-racists, those identity politics folks over with Resolution 16, as you were, Resolution 56. Now, there is a story, the Daily News is the only local media that picked this up, and they ran a story this afternoon. Now, you just heard how the American Samoa newspaper reported it. I'll pick up on this. A federal appeals court on Wednesday issued a ruling related to territorial rights. Wait a minute. The headline is Appeals Court, No Birthright Citizenship for American Samoa. Okay. A federal appeals court on Wednesday issued a ruling related to territorial rights, stating residents of the U.S. territory of American Samoa are not U.S. citizens at birth. The ruling reverses a 2019 decision by a federal judge in Utah. According to the appeals court for the 10th Circuit, the people of American Samoa have not yet decided if they want to be U.S. citizens, and it is up to the Congress to decide whether to grant birthright citizenship to residents of the territory. Utah resident John Fitisimanu, who was born in American Samoa, sued in March 2018 to be recognized an American, citing the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Unlike residents of the other U.S. territories, those born in American Samoa are considered U.S. nationals instead of U.S. citizens because Congress never authorized birthright citizenship for American Samoa. A federal court in Utah ruled in favor of Fitisimanu in December 2019, but the federal court in the government of American Samoa, which officially opposes birthright U.S. citizenship, appealed the ruling to the 10th Circuit. Okay, we got to take a short break here, and we'll come back to American Samoa after the break.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
President says he's always ready. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Ahead of his meeting today in Geneva with Russia's President Vladimir Putin, he plans to talk about cyber attacks, climate change, and Russian military actions, among other things. It's the conclusion of the president's first foreign trip since his inauguration.
President Biden has met with U.S. troops, G7 allies, and NATO partners on this trip. Tuesday, he re-engaged with the European Union, again pledging that the U.S. is once more in the world conversation.
We have never fully left, but we're reasserting the fact that it's overwhelming the interest of the United States of America to have a great relationship with NATO and with the EU.
A settled dispute with the EU over subsidies to airplane manufacturers is seen as a sign of the benefits of that dialogue and proof, as the president says, that America is back.
Fox's Gernal Scott. Back in Washington, efforts continue to refine a compromise infrastructure bill.
There are a good number of members in our caucus who say to us, whenever you can do something bipartisan, you ought to try. And we are. And we had good success.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, but Minority Leader Mitch McConnell predicts Democrats will still push through elements of their plan without GOP support.
I think the Majority Leader's indicated there will be a reconciliation effort. I think what they're wrestling with is what will it contain. So we are anticipating at some point getting a reconciliation bill.
Within a week of taking office, President Biden told the Interior Department to halt new oil and gas drilling leases on federal land and in federal waters. Now a federal judge has blocked that order, saying the administration failed to present a rational explanation for it. America is listening to Fox News.
Hoffaday, this is Congressman St. Nicholas. Your congressional office would like to remind you that pandemic unemployment assistance is set to expire on September 6th of this year. We encourage the people of Guam to seek out active employment as much as possible, as jobs continue to remain limited, and we want to prevent hardship for our people at the conclusion of the PUA program. Thank you, and see to us, Mahasi.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Get your shot and win big prizes, Guam. The Office of the Governor and the Guam Visitors Bureau presents Vaccine Win Guam. Protect our community by getting your shot and enter online at visitguam.com/vax for a chance to win. Starting June 14th to July 21st, we'll be giving away weekly prizes of $10,000 cash and a brand new car to lucky residents who are fully vaccinated. That's 6 weeks of Vaccine Win opportunities. Some conditions apply. Log on to visitguam.com/vax for official promo rules or to submit your entry today. Let's Vaccine Win, Guam!
The Federal Reserve Board concludes its two-day policy meeting today.
Economists predict that the central bank will not take any policy actions after the gathering concludes this afternoon. But Federal Reserve officials could signal that they anticipate raising interest rates soon.
Plant would continue.
We really want to get and see, do those numbers hold well through the next overnight, right? So that we can make sure that those positive numbers that we're getting in terms of air quality can persist.
The cause of the massive fire was unclear. Roughly 70 employees were at the plant at the time, but no one was injured. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
China plans to launch a manned spacecraft into orbit on Wednesday. 2 American astronauts will go for a spacewalk outside the International Space Station to work on the installation of new solar arrays. A police officer in Honolulu has been charged with murder. 2 other cops with attempted murder for the shooting death of a 16-year-old boy driving a stolen car in April. The prosecutor says Officer Jeffrey Tom fired 10 shots into that car without provocation. A disgraced movie mogul is headed back toward Hollywood.
Harvey Weinstein is headed to Los Angeles to face rape and sexual assault charges. He's expected to be removed from a New York correctional facility and transferred sometime in July. His lawyer, Norman Effman, in a New York courtroom said that he would appeal the decision. A requested stay was denied. Effman has been arguing against the move over paperwork issues and his client's health. The 69-year-old faces 11 sexual assault charges in Los Angeles involving 5 women. If convicted, he could face up to an additional 140 years behind bars. His extradition has been delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Indulge Dad this Father's Day with a well-prepared pairing from Pro Restaurant and Budweiser, the king of beers. Pro's specialized menu includes a slow-roasted, herb-crusted prime rib and an Amberbach barbecue-glazed pork chop. Pair Dad's meal with the Bud family for $3.50, Kona beers for $4, or Ironstone wines for $5. For dads with a sweet tooth, Pro Patisserie has created a milk tea mousse stout beer cake glazed with chocolate. To reserve a table, call Pro Restaurant at 646-PROA. Budweiser reminds you to drink responsibly. responsibly.
Do you dread waiting in those long, inconvenient lines? That's why you won't find them at Bank Pacific. We're back to our pre-COVID Monday to Saturday hours with all of our branches open. You know, that where others put branches, we place roots thing. And if you don't want to come to the bank, we have MyCloud Banking through which you can go to the bank on any of your devices, including through our new cool mobile banking platform with a remote capture so you can deposit checks from anywhere. Offline, online, no line. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots and rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Busy week? Mezcla Bistro in Tumon has you covered. Let us take the worries out of your dinner meal planning. Check out our daily specials or enjoy some of your local favorites. Plus, receive a free kids meal with each adult dinner entree purchased Monday through Thursday. Call 969-2652 for more information or to make a reservation at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. And don't forget, Jack Larimer is live every Saturday night. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
So here we are after that big halftime show that, as always, is really good entertainment. Back to Puerto Rico and the Daily News write-up of the, actually, American Samoa and the Daily News write-up of the Fitisimano decision. A federal court in Utah ruled in favor of Fitisimano in December 2019, but the federal government and the government of American Samoa, which officially opposes birthright citizenship, appealed the ruling to the 10th Circuit. Several current and former Guam officials in May 2020, filed a brief with the appeals court supporting Fitisimano's quest for birthright citizenship and opposing the position taken by American Samoa's leaders. Now, those who would oppose the Samoa position and would support Fitisimano are the ones who don't favor self-determination. Yeah, so anybody who enlisted in that, like Michael San Nicolas, does not favor self-determination. Let the courts decide political status. And here's a quote from those supporters. This case presents implications of deep significance for the U.S. citizens born in Guam, Northern Marianas, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, says the brief, which was filed on behalf of former governors Carl Gutierrez, who apparently does not want self-determination.
Nope.
Felix Camacho, who apparently does not want self-determination.
Nope.
And Delegate Mike San Nicolas, who apparently doesn't want self-determination.
Nope.
Quote, ruling that American Samoans are not birthright citizens would imperil the citizenship and increase the marginalization of those born in all the territories. How?
Nope.
Now, of course, the word marginalization, you have to use the word marginalization.
It's thrown around a lot.
Or people will think you don't know anything at all about critical race theory. Oppressed and oppressors, marginalization. Yeah, so if now that the 10th Circuit has ruled in favor of American Samoa, we could look forward to more marginalization here in Guam. How that's going to happen, I don't know. As far as citizenship is concerned, the only way that a person can, there are only a couple of ways that a person can lose his citizenship. If you are an American citizen and you're really dead set that you don't want to be an American citizen anymore, go to a U.S. consulate. which means you got to travel to a foreign country. You go to a U.S. consulate, present yourself. They'll ask you to fill out some papers, interview you, et cetera, and they can wave a magic wand and zap, you're no longer an American citizen. And it happens from time to time because the United States is one of the few countries in the world that asserts the power to tax its citizens on their worldwide income. So if you own a taco stand in Acapulco, whatever income you make on that taco stand is subject to the tax laws of the United States, unlike almost any other country. So people that are big earners often will go and renounce their citizenship. But there's a kicker, and that is that you can't use that for tax purposes for 10 more years to discourage that renunciation. That's one way. The other way that I know of is if a person was a naturalized citizen, born in a foreign country, naturalized in the United States, and made false statements in his naturalization purposes. The classic example is people who were guards in Nazi prison camps, who falsely swore that they weren't engaged in those Nazi activities. If that's found out, then a suit can be brought in the United States District Courts to denaturalize a person. But if you were a citizen by birth, I don't know of any other way that you could lose your citizenship except those two. If you read Ephraim versus Rusk, it suggests, although it's not directly on point, that citizenship is indelible. Once you got it, you got it forever. No one can take it away from you, even if the 10th Circuit rules in favor of American Samoa. So this is another one of these things where, people latch on to phrases that sound good, the shiny objects theory. Oh, yeah, people in Samoa should have rights too. They should be citizens just like we are. They don't want to be citizens. Well, yeah, they should be citizens just like we are. So, in other words, they should be citizens whether they want to or not. Well, yeah.
Marginalized.
Yeah, otherwise we're all going to be marginalized. I don't know. It's as though people lost their senses when this whole insular cases issue came up. And they find things in the insular cases that aren't there, overlook really important things in the insular cases that are there. So it's a hard phenomenon to understand. Going on with this story in the Daily News, according to Wednesday's appeal court ruling, the territory's democratically elected representatives remind us that their people have not formed a consensus in favor of American citizenship and urge us not to impose citizenship on an unwilling people from a courthouse thousands of miles away. That's only one of the ratio decidendi. There are a couple of more. And it's very interesting reading. It's a 98-page decision. And before we're finished, I'll tell you how you can find it. It's a well-written, it's very readable, and I would recommend that everybody in the legislature read it so they might have some foggy understanding of what the insular cases are all about. Going on with the Daily News. According to the court, U.S. citizenship would have uncertain legal consequences for American Samoa. The American Samoan government has opposed birthright citizenship, citing concerns related to cultural preservation and self-determination. Cultural preservation and self-determination, which Carl Gutierrez, Felix Camacho, and
MSN
and Michael San Nicolas don't care a whit about. They're just not interested in that. They're interested in protecting their citizenship. It is not the rule of the court, it is not the role of this court to second guess the political judgment of the American Samoan people. the appeals court stated. American Samoa Congressman Amata Coleman Radewagen, who we all know because she spent about 20 minutes talking about this on Tall Tales, who opposes birthright citizenship for the territory, thanked the court for its ruling on Wednesday. This is truly a blessing and should set this issue to rest. American Samoa has the right of self-determination, she said in a written statement. I'm calling on the plaintiffs and the special interests behind them, Neil Weir, in this case, to end their assault on the right of American Samoa people to determine for themselves whether or not to become U.S. citizens. Radewagen noted she introduced legislation to streamline the process for U.S. nationals from American Samoa to become U.S. citizens if they choose. Now, I looked it up, and if her bill became law, it would change the law like this. And now, in order to become a naturalized citizen, you have to live for 5 years in the United States. Under her bill, the 5 years could be in American Samoa. Under her bill, no tests, and no court would have jurisdiction over it. So it's just a matter of filling out the papers, and you're going to get your certificate of citizenship back. And
that's just for Samoan nationals.
Just for Samoans, yeah. And when she was on the show, I mentioned, when she was talking about that, I said, so you're going to have a simple procedure for naturalization for American Samoans. And she said, not really, because naturalization is for foreigners. Samoans are not foreigners. So it's more of a reclassification. Good solution. She goes on to say, if special interests want Samoans in the States to have citizenship, then they should limit future legal action to Samoans in the States, Radewagen said. Their efforts should not sweep up the people in the islands against their will. Self-determination, cultural preservation, all of the things that the separatists here are constantly bleating about. Okay, and then finally, I have a copy of today's Talanei paper from Samoa. And by the way, the Daily News here treats this as kind of like, oh, shucks, American Samoa, you don't get to be birthright. Sorry about that. Can we send flowers? And that's not it at all. They see this as a huge victory, as I see it as a huge victory. American Samoa and its leaders have won a huge victory in the Fitissimano citizenship case on appeal in the 10th Circuit. The appeals court reversed a Utah district court ruling that would have forcibly imposed constitutional birthright citizenship on American Samoans. The appellate court in Denver heard arguments in the case in September, taking almost 9 months to reach its decision against John Fitissimano, Pale and Rosavita Tule, and the Southern Utah Pacific Islander Coalition. Denver Appeals Court ruling in favor of the U.S., American Samoan government, and Amata Radewagen wrote that neither the Constitution nor Supreme Court precedent demands the district court's interpretation of the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment. We instead recognize, the appeals court wrote, Congress plays the preeminent role in the determination of citizenship in unincorporated territorial lands, adding the courts play a subordinate role. The court also wrote that precedent and historical practice require circumstances in the territory to be considered in determining the reach of the citizenship clause. It's evident the wishes of the territory's democratically elected representatives, who remind us their people have not formed a consensus in favor of American citizenship, and urge us not to impose it on an unwilling people from a courthouse thousands of miles away, have not been taken into adequate consideration. The court wrote, these circumstances advise against the extension of birthright citizenship to American Samoa. Amata issued a statement immediately after the momentous ruling that Fatissimo could still appeal to the Supreme Court, thanking the appeals court judges for respecting, quote, the people of American Samoa and the Samoan way. The congressman also thanked the attorneys who worked on the case. This is truly a blessing, Amata said, and should set this interest to ruling this issue to rest. And and that's it. So good news all the way around. Once again, Tina, if you don't feel foolish right now, you are at least tone deaf, because both the president, the 10th Circuit, and the elected representative from American Samoa have come out and told you that your Resolution 56 was not the way to go. Okay, the name of the case, let me see, is easy way to get there. There's a link here in this news story, and it's court-of-appel-ruling. So you could, if no other way, you could Google American Samoa decision, and you could probably get there. 98 pages long, but very, very good reading. Okay, I've got a couple of legal scholars in the on-deck circle, no doubt. I've got Frenchie and Kellis waiting for us here. So let's hear from Frenchie first. Good afternoon, Frenchie.
Good afternoon, Bob. How are you?
Doing great.
Good. I was calling about the LGBT. I refuse to call it LGBTQ because the T and the Qs have nothing to do with the LGBs. What we're seeing now is a politicization of something that was created originally, in the 80s. The LGBT movement started really taking flight due to the AIDS crisis. When the AIDS crisis stuck in most of the large urban communities in the United States, New York, San Francisco, LA, where you had large gay populations, and it was mostly gay men that were impacted. People don't recall because it's almost 40 plus years ago, but most of the Democrats were very anti-gay at that time. Dianne Feinstein closed most gay establishment in the city and wanted to put people in, like we've seen with the Wuhan virus, wanted to put people in health lockdown. She was amazing in her reactionary approach to the thing, and she was kind of shown. Actually, there was a recall of Dianne Feinstein as a mayor at the time, and basically you have two. This was when really that community got organized politically, but then afterwards it was hijacked by Democratic political activists, and that's when they added the T and the Q to it to continue the idea of victimhood. Now, granted, years ago, being openly gay was a dangerous business. You could be beaten up. You had many cases of police following people, taking their license plate. There were laws on the book in many states against sodomy and all those things. But we are not living in those days anymore. It's like black people telling us Jim Crow is still existing. Jim Crow no longer exists. They were terrible times, but we have moved forward. We have gone completely different. When you hear local so-called LGBTQ leaders pretending that they do not have a voice, I mean, who are they kidding? You have a former Supreme Court judge who is now the Auditor General. You have the second most important person in the government, the Lieutenant Governor, who is openly gay. You have several senators that are openly lesbians. What else do you want to do? If they do not have power, I don't know who does. And nowadays in the U.S., most Fortune 500 companies have benefits for their GLBT employees. So there is no more discrimination. Now, granted, there was two very high, how would you say that, highly viewed assassination. One was Harvey Milk in San Francisco. Hollywood lionized the man, and he was a political activist and was arguing for people to get out of the closet so that they could push forward their own agenda, which is basically what happened. And then, unfortunately, I think it was 97 or 98, I think it's 98, in Wyoming, you had the murder of a 20-year-old student. I think his name was Shepard.
Matthew Shepard.
Yeah, Matthew Shepard back in 98, which was basically the equivalent of the George Floyd story, where gay activists really used this to bring forward new legislation in a lot of states and everything. And frankly, it was a terrible case where the poor kid was left out to die on a fence, tied up to a fence in the middle of the prairie out there in Wyoming. And the press painted people in Wyoming as everybody was a redneck out to get gay people. It was interesting because when that thing happened, I was actually on a hunting trip in Wyoming, and there is not much to do in Wyoming at night, and so you go to the local coffee shop and you try to get a burger or ham and cheese sandwich, and you listen to the local stock. And I tell you what, the locals were not happy about this. They thought it was terrible. So to bunch everybody as being a bunch of rednecks that were anti-gay, that was not the case. And but it was politicized. And but nowadays, to say, I don't think there is a state in the nation that still has sodomy laws. The policies and the laws have changed. The Supreme Court has recognized gay marriage.
Lawrence versus Texas found that states do not have the ability to criminalize.
That's right. So you have a lot of, saying that it was like 40 years ago, it's preposterous and it's basically criminal. And it shows a lack of fortitude and a lack of honesty. And as far as most gays and lesbians, I think we all have people that are gays and lesbians in our families, and we deal with them the way we would deal with any other member of the family. Some of them are nice people, some of them not so much. But, it was very interesting to look at the returns of the voting for the presidential election. Over 40% of self-identified gay and lesbians voted for President Trump. So it shows it's not a monolithic bloc. It's people that just think like you and I, and that have diverging views on a lot of things. And for the local so-called self-appointed leaders of GLBTQ community to criticize the church, it's preposterous. If there is an organization of a lot of gay people work in it, it's the Catholic Church. I mean, we've seen that sometimes not in very nice ways, but I don't want to broad paint with a white brush a lot of the priests that are actually very honest and truthful to their vows of celibacy. But we have seen that a lot of them are not. So this whole thing is just to make hay, to make political points, and is basically on the lie. Because the way gays and lesbians are regarded in societies nowadays, even if you don't agree with the way they live, most people have a live and let live attitude, and they don't go out of their ways to discriminate against gays. And if you did that in your own work environment, you would be in trouble yourself. So, except for Muslim countries and other countries where those things are not looked upon positively, in the Western world, I mean, it's a non sequitur, So I wanted to put that in perspective historically, and also the fact that basically some people are trying to push an old story that no longer exists. Right?
Very good point, Fredgie. Thank you very much. We're going to head for Wrigley Field in the 7th inning stretch, and I'm going to come, when I'm in Wrigley Field, I'm going to be looking for Kellis, so he'll be next up. And then I've got someone who wants to repeat what he said about being worse for wear, or is it worse for weir? Yeah.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Okay, so here I am wandering around in the grandstand at Wrigley Field and chance upon none other than Kellis. Good afternoon, Kellis.
Good afternoon, Judge. How are you today?
Doing great.
So my question, because you were talking about, basically, people seeing rights or in like the Constitution and Bill of Rights and all this, and where the rights are not actually there, and the one that I thought of is the right for an abortion. Isn't that considered free speech?
To talk about there not being a right to abortion, or what do you mean?
No, in other words, I'm saying that they're saying that it was their constitutional right to have an abortion is covered under free speech.
Oh, I
see. That's what it was. Free speech is what the finals came out with.
Well, it's the classic case of a court making it up.
Right. I'm saying there is no
right to abortion, and the Supreme Court has said that a woman's right to privacy is what allows her to abort her child. Up until the time the child could survive outside the mother's body. And the way the court...
Except for now in Virginia and New York, you can go past that.
The way the Supreme Court got there in a almost fake case called Griswold versus Connecticut, they found that a New Jersey law criminalizing birth control divorces was an invasion of privacy. Now, privacy stands out about as much as abortion does if you're going to do a find and replace with the Constitution. But the reasoning there was that the right of privacy exists in the emanations and penumbras of the Bill of Rights. So they found the Bill of Rights in Griswold versus Connecticut the bill of that right of privacy was the basis for their Roe versus Wade decision, and even for the Obergefell decision that allowed Herman and Henry to get married. And it's all made up. It's all just very clever use of high-sounding vocabulary to describe something that isn't actually there.
Right, and this is the whole bit of the court who is supposed to be interpreting the law, instead of interpreting the law, writing laws.
And it's to the 10th Circuit's credit when they say that, this is not a matter for the court. This is a matter for the legislature. We're not going to decide this case.
That's what I was thinking, but it's like, because I couldn't remember if it was, I knew it was privacy, but I thought privacy was under free speech, the right to, free speech. So where would privacy be under a right?
Well, they claim that the Third Amendment, which prohibits quartering of troops in your house, the Fourth Amendment, which guarantees against unreasonable searches and seizures, the Ninth and 10th Amendments, which are kind of the reserved rights part of the Bill of Rights. And it's not in those amendments, but in the emanations and penumbras of those amendments. Penumbra is a really fancy word. It kind of means shadow. Have you almost put your
shadows?
Have you almost got your block put back together, Kellis? It sounds like you're putting your car back together.
Oh no! I was just grabbing something. Oh. But yeah, I just wanted to say that, like Roe versus Wade and all that other stuff there's no, an amendment. There's no right. There's no law, except for you said like it emanates from like all of them. But I sit there and say that like right there in the beginning where it says that we all have the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and the first one is being life. How come they don't sit there and say, doesn't life emanate from life?
Well, you see, the sophistry there is to say the Supreme Court in Roe said philosophers and others have argued for centuries as to when life begins. We don't know either. So because we don't know when life begins, we're going to say that when the baby can survive outside his mother. Because as soon as the court decided that a fetus is a person, then the 14th Amendment kicks in, no deprivation of life without due process of law. So it took some really fancy judicial footwork to get around that, and that's what this current case that may be heard by the Supreme Court gets into.
But so my question is, how does, like if the fetus could survive on its own outside the womb, and so if the fetus is outside the womb because they were going to do a late-term abortion, it is now taking a breath and it's alive, how can they then continue with the abortion?
Well, they can't.
In Virginia and New York.
Yeah, they can't, and that's why Governor
Northam.
North.
I thought they could in Virginia and New York right now.
And that's why Governor Northam in Virginia is not a pro-abortionist. He's a pro-infanticide guy.
Yeah.
So
what I was getting at is you just said that, once a fetus could survive outside the womb, and that could technically, that should be like up to like 6 months, of a fetus, it could survive outside the womb. But, let's just say, but if the fetus they're doing a late-term abortion and the fetus comes out and it cries and it's sitting there, and then the doctors sit there and say, well, do you want to continue with the abortion? That's murder, but evidently not in Virginia or.
It would be under our law, and of course, criminal statutes are the province of the states.
Right.
So if a state doesn't want to make a crime of murder, then there would be no murder. That's not going to happen.
Oh.
But that's the way it works.
Okay, Judge. I know it's getting late, so I just wanted to get that in there real fast.
Okay, good talking to you again, Kellis.
Good talking to you too, Judge.
And let's see, I still got some. Let's see, it's Repeat, right? Repeat wants to once again compliment Neil Weir on his advocacy, right, Pete?
Actually, ironically enough, I was not triggered by that. I wasn't very surprised by the 10th Circuit. You know, it's common sense, but I'll just say, you know, Guam, sans tall tales and Repeat jumped on the wrong bandwagon, you know, the Neil Weir bandwagon, and we should have been on the Rada wagon. But the reason why I called was because something Frenchie said, you know, it made me realize, why is there such a strong, vociferous movement here on Guam when there really hasn't been any sort of oppression, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just Guam likes to jump on bandwagons.
Well,
you know,
people that analyze social trends and things like that always come back to the word power. So those who are advancing, you know, the rainbow-colored flag are looking not to be treated as equals, but to assume powers that they wouldn't ordinarily be entitled to. Otherwise, why would you have...
Or exceptional. They want to be considered exceptional. But here's the problem that I thought of while listening. You know, let's say another dude wants to be a little forward with me and advanced and kind of touches me inappropriately, and then I open up a can of whoop ass, you know, defending myself or my honor. You know, the problem is that could be construed as a hate crime, even though all it really was me defending against unwelcome touching, defending against an assault, and defending against a sexual assault. So that's the problem that I see, is that, you know, if we give them special status, you know, then me just being me and defending myself in that scenario, I would be in a lot more hot water than I would be, you know, normally.
You know, Pete, I can't think of, I probably could, but it would take me a while to think of a greater legislative overreach than this whole hate crime thing. It's a classic case of using identity politics to reach a really inappropriate result. So, you know, if someone punches you in the nose because he doesn't like the way you try your cases, you're probably going to have a bloody nose. If somebody punches you in the nose because you're Chamorro, guess what? You're probably going to have a bloody nose, right? The results don't differ based on the motivation. But it's a way of pandering to these identity groups. That's why I was so hard on Jim Moylan when he introduced his stupid hate crimes bill last time around. It's another one we expected from Democrats, but we hold Republicans to a higher standard.
The other thing that is pandering, really, the whole we need more police, and we need to do better with the restraining orders and all that. You know, I've said many, many times that we don't need more police. We need better education and opportunities in the community. The police aren't there to be our personal security guards. The police aren't there to catch everyone who wants to go and intrude on somebody's property and steal stuff, or break into their homes and steal and commit crimes.
Well,
that's not what the police are here for.
What they're here for is to keep an eye on Steve Ignacio's motorcycle.
Yeah. But if we want to really truly solve the problem and not just try to treat symptoms, then it's a community problem. It's a community issue, and it's two basic things. Like I said, it's you know, having opportunities, and then also teaching people how to be right and not take a left, Chelu. You know, teaching people how to be right and do the right thing, whether someone's watching or not. You know, so we need to do more in that front about making sure that people are brought up right the way the way things used to be, and even though I'm a defense attorney, we still need to enforce. We still need to. That doesn't mean that I'm anti-enforcement. We need to enforce the laws, and we need to punish people accordingly. My job is to make sure that the government has all their ducks in a row, and if they don't, then I have to look out for the rights of my clients. So, the prosecution needs to do a better job. They're making it too easy for me sometimes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. All right, but enough about Neil Weir. I'm weary of that. I did not. This was no surprise, and I just hope, like you said earlier, that people actually wake up and open their eyes and see what we've been talking about all this time.
We'll keep after it, won't we, Pete? We'll keep repeating.
I'll repeat as needed.
Very good. Good talking to you, Pete.
All right, Uncle Bob.
Okay, so it's time to go to Churchill Downs, and when I get there, I'm going to be looking in the grandstand for our James. And if there's a drive-through restaurant nearby, I expect I could find Jack in there.
Hey, big news! Now you can listen to The Point on radio.com. And radio.com gives you so much more. Local news stations give you what's going on in your community. Get national news from CBS, CNN, or Fox News Radio. Take a break with one of the hundreds of music, sports, and talk stations. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere. On your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the Radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
Get your shot and win big prizes, Guam. The Office of the Governor and the Guam Visitors Bureau presents Vax and Win, Guam. Protect our community by getting your shot and enter online at visitguam.com/vax for a chance to win. Starting June 14th through July 21st, weekly prizes of $10,000 cash and a brand new car will be given away to lucky residents who are fully vaccinated. That's 6 weeks of Vax and Win opportunities. Some conditions apply. Log on to visitguam.com/vax for official promo rules or to submit your entry today.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, and who do I see making himself comfortable up here in the grandstand? None other than R. James. Hello, R. James.
Good afternoon, Bob. Well, I'm really kind of perplexed about all of this identity pandering, whether it's gender or politics or color. I don't know. I've kind of come pretty much to the conclusion that they're trying to segregate, relegate, and separate everyone onto one side or the other. And for the life of me, I don't understand why they want to go that direction, because, anytime you draw the line in the sand and you say, okay, if you stick your foot over this line, then we're going to fight. Okay, I'm really lost in all of this, because I can't think of, and my mind is not the sharpest tool in the drawer, but I cannot think of any reason why they want to continue to push these agendas and narratives unless they actually want to, quote unquote, separate, half of the United States, and it's this half against that half.
Well, if you follow,
what I'm coming down to.
if you follow critical race theory, R. James, they do want to separate the country, but it's not this half and that half. It's the haves and the have-nots, and they want to separate the haves and the have-nots, and make sure that the have-nots have plenty more, and they have to take it from the haves, and it's all I've explained it before, but. The formula is you take something that happened a long time ago, 1619 as an example, and you paint it in the worst possible light, and then you pretend that it happened yesterday, and you judge it by today's morals and ethics, find it absolutely wrong, and say that it's so embedded in the government that the government can't be fixed. Therefore, reform is impossible. What we have to do is junk this form that we're using and come up with a new form. And that's what critical race theory is all about. Yeah. And it comes down to, reparations for one thing. So, the idea is that people who are people of color, Black Americans as an example, should be given money. And the money should be taken away from white Americans. Now, the average white American is going to say, I didn't do anything wrong. My folks weren't even here until 1900. But the answer is, yeah, but you made all your money because of white supremacy. So that's the reason you got to give it away. It's all there. They lay it all out, and they sell it, and they stand on it, and they try to get everybody into this game of breaking. That's why I got on the use of this word community in the Daily News editorial today. People don't belong to communities. People have individual rights, and rights are involved in individuals, not in communities. Anyhow, go ahead, R. James.
Well, no, I'm just sitting here chalking it up to, not just quote unquote, Soviet or Chinese. I mean, everybody knows that, anyone who's, ists, in my opinion, anything that ends with ist, communist, fascist, the ist is just another dirty word. They're all sitting back and laughing their butt off because we're doing their work for them. They're taking us apart from the inside out, and we're actually doing it for them.
Yep.
And the old saying, together we stand, divided we fall, I really and truly don't think could be any more accurate at any time in our history than it is right now, because we're forwarding their agenda, and we're splitting ourselves apart. We're doing their job for them, and they're just laughing their butt off and eating it up as fast as they can go. One of the things that you mentioned early in the program today was with reference to gay and lesbian, that you didn't embrace it, but you weren't outwardly against it, or am I incorrect with that? What was it you said?
I said I tolerate it. I don't accept it, and I darn sure don't celebrate it.
Right. Tolerant of it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have basically all of my adult life, I have considered myself to be, I guess I could say I'm tolerant of it. But I've considered myself to be indifferent of it. It doesn't make any difference to me. If you want to be gay, be gay. If you're lesbian, okay. I have hired, worked with, operated with people from all walks of life on 7 different continents, okay? And a lot of them are lesbian or gay, and that doesn't cross my mind at all. What crosses my mind is, can we get this done? Is there going to be a problem?
Is
anybody going to get hurt because of whatever, anything, whether it's, somebody
on an individual basis. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. But it's when we develop this political strategy of coming forward with the LGBTQ community. So we don't deal with individuals as individuals. We have to deal with their community and their membership in the community.
Yeah, and I'm going to relate this to you just really quickly because this actually happened. In 2019, we went back to the States for vacation. My wife and my two daughters walk into the bathroom at Disneyland, okay, and I'm standing outside waiting. And my younger daughter, she comes out and she grabs me and she says, "Daddy, there's a man in the woman's bathroom." And I was like, "What?" You know, and she said, "Yeah." And she was scared. Okay, she was scared. All right, well, this individual comes walking out, and while we're still having this conversation, and I'm trying to get some information from my daughter because I don't know what's going on in there. You know, I mean, it could have been something really bad. Well, this individual comes walking out, and it's visually a male with like kind of a lot of female traits, you know, fingernails and makeup and, you know, other stuff. And I was like, well, I said, did this person do anything to you? Did anybody touch you? Did anybody say anything to you? And she was like, no, but I was just, you know, she said, there's not supposed to be guys in the girls' bathroom, Dad. And I said, yes, sweetheart, I completely understand. Okay. Well, this individual walks out, and then it all kind of clicks and comes together that, you know, this person, I guess, is identifying themselves as a female, so they're supposed to be able to use the female facility.
I wonder how often Caitlyn Jenner goes to Disneyland.
Well, yeah, that's a good one. You know, I guess where I personally draw the line and say that I'm no longer indifferent, that I don't personally care whether somebody wants to be a male or a female or this or that or whatever, is when they start trying to impose their will upon my will, okay? And when a little girl walks out of a bathroom scared and grabs her dad and says, "Dad, there's a guy in the girl's bathroom," you know, yeah, okay, the courts can say that they have the right to use the women's restroom if they want to. But again, I'm going to, you know, go back to something you mentioned the other day. Look, I'm sorry, you know, these people can run amok with the labeling all they want to. But as far as human beings on the planet Earth, you're either born a male or a female. Okay. Or, and I do feel sorry for them, and most of them do get, you know, the treatments that they need, you know, a natural born hermaphrodite. I probably didn't pronounce that right. But when somebody just decides one day, okay, I've got a male body, but I'm not a male and I want to use all of the female facilities, or vice versa, okay, and a woman wants to use the men's facilities. Okay, now look, if a woman walks into the men's restroom while there's 15 guys...
Hey, excuse me, R. James, I'd like to continue this, but I got to go to the toilet.
Yeah, there you go. Good. And that's about where this conversation probably belongs.
Good talking to you, R. James.
Yeah, you too, Bob.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
hours away. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Today's U.S.-Russia summit meeting.
President Biden and President Putin are due to meet at an 18th century manor house overlooking Lake Geneva. President Biden calls Putin a worthy adversary, but says he hopes to find areas of cooperation. There's a long list of American grievances, including Russian cyber attacks targeting the United States. Both leaders have described U.S.-Russia relations as being at their lowest point in years.
Fox's Simon Owen. About those cyber attacks, Utah Republican Congressman Chris Stewart telling Fox's special report with Brett Baer.
This conversation has got to have teeth. It can't be, hey, don't attack us with cyber attacks, and Vladimir Putin go, we don't, and then say, well, okay, well, that's good to know, and move on. Of course he does. Confront it, look at the reality.
The bipartisan group of senators is calling on the president to also raise the issue of directed energy microwave attacks targeting U.S. diplomats. Congressional Democrats are preparing to go it alone on at least parts of an infrastructure bill.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer remains optimistic a bipartisan infrastructure deal will emerge.
But alongside that is the view that that won't be enough. It won't be enough on climate. It won't be enough on revenues.
So Schumer is beginning a budget process for a second bill that could include additional provisions to be passed without Republican support.
At the moment, both tracks, as I said, are moving forward and progressing very well.
Both measures could also be taken up for votes as soon as next month.
Fox's Jared Halperin. The Senate has passed a bill that would make Juneteenth a federal holiday, commemorating the end of slavery on June 19th, 1865. The House is expected to pass that bill as well. Wall Street Tuesday, the Dow dropped 94 points, NASDAQ 101, the S&P 500 closing 8 points lower. Asian stock markets have closed Wednesday lower, and Dow futures are down as well. America is listening to Fox News.